All right. Welcome, Ranger Kelly. We have a great class here, fourth graders from Bedell, and we're ready for you.
Fantastic! Well, welcome, everybody, to this special broadcast of Channel Islands Live. My name, as Ranger Monique said, is Ranger Kelly, or Kelly Moore, and I am a park ranger here at Channel Islands National Park. And today is a very, 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 very special day for us. We are joining 411 other national parks in celebrating 100 years of protecting and sharing our nation's most precious treasures, the national parks. And we are so excited that you've joined us on this very special day. And I'd like to start by welcoming our audiences. We've got a small group here with us on Anacapa Island. I just saw right before I jumped in the water. So welcome everyone topside here on Anacapa. We also have a great group of fourth graders from Santa Paula. They're at our visitor center. Hey, fourth graders, can I get a great big hello, Ranger Kelly, on 3? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was very loud. It sounds like you're almost right here with me, underwater at the Channel Islands. So good, you guys can hear me, I can hear you. And today we are diving in the portion of the park most visitors don't get to see. It's literally a forest underwater. All right, fourth graders, if you know the name of this forest, please shout it out. Go! You got it! All right, I'm definitely going to have to make my questions more difficult for you next time. You're right, kelp forest, and it's home to nearly 1,000 different marine organisms. And this is a very special kelp forest because we are diving in what we call a marine reserve. And in these areas, there's no fishing or taking of any wildlife at all. It's protected. Everything around me today is protected. And so what you get to witness, what we all get to witness, is a very healthy, functioning ecosystem. So, in today's program, we will take a closer look at some of the different animals that call the kelp forest home. We'll touch on some current threats to this kelp forest ecosystem and ways that you and I can help protect it. All right, are you ready? Let's begin by first taking a closer look at the main seaweed or algae of the kelp forest, giant kelp itself. And here's a great example of what a kelp plant looks like. And it's very well adapted for living in this marine environment. It's got these flexible or bendable, they look a lot like stems, but they're called stipes. And they allow the kelp to move around because the ocean is always moving. And that helps them survive. They've also got a very important part here. My cameraman Josh will zoom in for you. Hopefully you'll get a good up-close and personal shot of what we call an air-filled bladder. This air-filled bladder, surprise, is filled with air. And it acts like a big balloon, lifting the kelp up towards the surface of the ocean because it needs something that is shining down from up above to survive. Fourth graders, maybe this is too easy, but shout it out. What's shining down from up above that the kelp needs to survive? You guys are so great. Yeah, the sun. And it uses that sun light to undergo a process called photosynthesis. So Hopefully you're familiar with that term. Photosynthesis is this process that helps produce energy for kelp to grow. And kelp is one of the fastest growing organisms on the planet. All right, fourth graders, does anybody want to take a guess? How tall can kelp grow in just one day? Ranger Monique, do you have any takers?
Like 3 inches?
3 inches is a great guess, but kelp can grow a bit faster. I will take one more guess.
20 feet?
Can you repeat that, please?
20 feet?
Whoa! 20 feet is also a great guess. The correct answer is, drum roll, 2 feet. So 2 feet is about this tall. Okay, 24 inches. Imagine if you grew 2 feet in one day. You'd be halfway to the moon. Well, kelp is very well adapted for living in this marine environment. With that process of photosynthesis, kelp is also producing oxygen for everything that lives here under the sea, but it also produces the majority of the oxygen that you and I breathe every day. So join me now. Take a big, deep breath. And thank your nearest kelp plant for that oxygen you just got. Okay, let's move on to something a little more exciting. Let's move on to some critters that call the kelp forest home. You ready? Once you know the name of this critter, my dive buddies are going to bring one in. If you guys see it and you know the name of it, shout it out, okay? Come on in. I'll reel you in like a big fish. There they are. Thank you, Ranger Jeff. All right, what are these critters, guys? Urchins, you got it. Sea urchins. I've got a red sea urchin here and a purple sea urchin here. 2 different species that both live in the kelp forest and rely on it for food in particular. You can see as kelp blades, they call it, look a lot like leaves, but they're called blades. They often break off and float down to the seafloor, and urchins have adapted these great spines that then pierce the kelp, moving it, I dropped my purple, oh, we'll leave them there for now, moving that kelp blade down into the under part of its body where its mouth is. So you're getting a good shot of that. So they're really good at eating kelp, and that's their primary food source here, are the different types of algae you see around me. And believe it or not, a lot of people eat sea urchin. Maybe you guys are going, really? People eat sea urchin? Well, believe it or not, there's a type of sushi called uni that comes from this type of sea urchin right here, the red sea urchin. Purples are usually too small, so people don't eat them as often. But in a lot of areas here at the Channel Islands, fishermen collect sea urchin to sell as uni in mostly Asian markets, but you can find it here locally as well at your local sushi restaurant. So oftentimes we don't see as many red urchins because they've all been removed from areas that are not protected like this marine reserve. And what happens is the purple urchins really luck out because they've got no more competition from our red sea urchins. And their populations can explode. They can mow down entire kelp forests, especially if we also remove the animals that eat our purple urchins, like lobster or giant California sheephead. So in areas that are not protected, we see a lot of purple urchins and often areas where there's very little kelp. It's a good example of why it's important to have areas like these marine reserves that keep everything in balance and all the players of the food web present to help maintain that balance. predators get to them. Oh, and as he takes those urchins, he handed me another kelp forest critter. Okay, you guys, if you know what this is, go ahead and shout it out, fourth graders.
Sea cucumber.
My goodness, you guys are so sharp. You're right. It is called a warty sea cucumber, and you can imagine why it got that name. It's got little warts or bumps all over its body. But this is a cousin to the sea urchin you just saw. And it spends most of its time crawling around on the seafloor. It really likes sandy bottoms because it goes around and eats all the plant and animal matter that kind of falls to the sea, a lot like an earthworm in the soils on land. And sea cucumbers like this are also collected and eaten in many markets, especially in Asia. You might be able to find sea cucumber on a menu or at the local seafood shop. And so they're another example of one of the different kelp forest species or critters that really rely on the protection and refuge of these marine reserves. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back. You see, it really blends in well to the bottom. As I put it down, you can see how well it camouflages to the seafloor. Now, Ranger Monique, before I move on to another critter, I would love to take a question from our fourth grader class.
From all the fishes you've seen down in the marine reserve, what was the biggest species you've seen so far?
I really like that question. Well, just today, actually, I saw one of the biggest fish I've ever seen. On my dive earlier this morning, I saw what we call a giant black sea bass. Giant black sea bass can get to the size of Beetles, Volkswagen Beetle cars, several hundred pounds. Now, the one I saw wasn't that big. It was probably about 5 to 6 feet long, but that's still longer than I am tall. And it swam right by me, checked me out, and just kept on going. And my heart was thumping. Quite a spectacular thing to see. And one of the biggest fishes that we would see here in the kelp forest. Great question. Thank you so much. All right, you ready to see another critter? Let's bring them over. Oh, great. One of my favorite of the kelp forest. All right, everybody. Shout it out if you know the name of this animal. It got a little quiet on that end. This is what we call a sea hare. Hare like a rabbit. And you might guess why they call it a sea hare. Look at on its head. It's got these two big ears, much like a rabbit does. And this is a bit of a small one. They can get about 3 times as big, weighing almost 30 pounds. Okay, and this sea hare will graze around on algae, and we often see them halfway up the kelp plants. They will crawl up the blades and the stipes to get up to where they find the younger kelp blades because they're easier to chew, and those younger blades are typically at the top of kelp plants. So this one, it's actually one of my favorite critters to see in the kelp forest. Just because they're so soft and they're really neat to see. A really important player in the food web down here, too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give our sea hare back because we've got so many critters to show you. I got to keep them coming. Here's one more for you. Oh, we've got a couple of good ones around here. Thank you, Ranger Dave. Okay, maybe you guys know the name of this critter. Go ahead and shout it out, fourth graders. You knew I was going to ask you to shout it out, didn't you? This is called the California spiny lobster. Maybe you guys have seen some lobster before and are going, hey, where are the lobster's claws? Well, California spiny lobster actually doesn't have claws. It's different than those species that occur often on the east coast of our country. Those Maine lobsters have big claws, which people eat. People do eat California spiny lobster as well, but instead of eating the claws, they just eat the tail portion here. So they are fished here at the Channel Islands, and it's an example of another species that really finds protection here in the Marine Reserve. And if I put it down, you'll see how well it too camouflages to the seafloor. And do I see any predators around? Yes, I do. Well, I was going to let it go, and you could watch it swim away, but if there's a big sheephead swimming around, I don't feel comfortable doing that, so I'm going to go ahead and give him back. Oh, wow, to my dive buddy who surprised me with another kelp forest critter. One of the top in the food chain. Thank you. Okay. What everybody always asks about, what kind of animal is this? I almost gave it away. Yeah, it's a shark. Everybody wants to know, do you see sharks, Ranger Kelly? Are you scared of sharks, Ranger Kelly? So here is a great example of one. And as you can see, there's really nothing to be afraid of. This horned shark is only about 2 feet long. This is what we typically see here at the Channel Islands, although there's about 16 other types of sharks that we could see if we were lucky. And sharks are a very important part of the food web here at the Channel Islands and around the world. And this individual usually is tucked back in cracks during the day. And they come out at nighttime to feed on small invertebrates like sea urchins and clams and crabs. So it's probably not too pleased that we've kept it awake during the day for today's program, but we promised it we would return it to the crack so it could continue its nap and rest up to feed tonight. So I'll go ahead and give it back now. Actually, I'm going to let it swim away and let you guys watch it swim, okay? And we'll see which way it goes, and this is a real test or challenge for my camera operator, Ranger Josh, to catch it as it swims away. Oh, well, hello! It missed me. It swam right back to me. Bye, horned shark. Okay, fourth graders, do you have another quick question for me before we move on?
How many sharks do you see, like many sharks underwater?
Unfortunately, I don't get to see very many sharks underwater. I see a few a dive, like that size, a small horn shark or a swell shark. But I don't get to see too many anymore. Unfortunately, shark populations around the world are very threatened. And people kill sharks because they're afraid of them or because they like to eat them in a dish called shark fin soup. Maybe many of you have heard of that before. And so sharks are killed around the world at staggering rates. So unfortunately, we don't get to see too many, but they are a real treat when we do, and they're really an important part of the food web. We would like to see more of them because they keep other species in check, okay, and help keep everything balanced. So quickly, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention that even though we get to see this beautiful kelp forest today, boy, and all these critters we've gotten to see, and you can imagine how they all work in balance or in harmony here to keep this area healthy. But there are some threats to the kelp forest and our oceans as a whole. Do any of you fourth graders have any ideas about some of the current threats to our oceans?
people leave a lot of trash around, so the fishes eat that and they get poisoned?
Very good, yes. Excellent answer. Excellent. Yeah, trash is a big threat. Pollution, plastics, oil spills, those are all threats to the health of our ocean. Okay? Other things include climate change. Maybe you guys have heard of that before or heard those words. And as our atmospheric temperatures continue to go up, so does the temperature of our oceans. And this kelp forest thrives in very cool water, very nutrient-rich water. And so as the water temperature continues to go up, it threatens the health of some of these ecosystems like the kelp forest. Another threat is what we call or refer to as ocean acidification. Okay, as more carbon is being released into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, a lot of that carbon is being absorbed by our oceans, causing it to become more acidic. And that acidic seawater is having an effect on a lot of animals that have calcium shells. A lot of sea slugs or mollusks, crabs, lobsters are all negatively impacted by that change in pH in the water. So those are some current threats, but I don't want to end with doom and gloom because there's so much that you and I can do to help protect our oceans and help keep it healthy. Do you guys have any ideas on ways that you can do that? What can you do?
To pick up trash?
Yes, to pick up trash. It seems so simple, right? But it's really important. Or even to just throw trash away in the proper receptacle. Maybe you guys could volunteer to do a beach cleanup. That's a good idea. Maybe eat seafood that's sustainably taken or harvested. You could walk more or ride your bike more and drive your car less. Yeah? Support efforts like marine reserves. These are all little things, but if we all do them together, we can have a larger impact and really make a difference and help keep this ocean system healthy because we rely on it, remember, for so much. We rely on it for recreation, as a food source, and that ever-important oxygen, remember, that we breathe every single day. So we're really, really connected to our oceans, and it's up to us to keep it healthy. Okay, so we can enjoy it now and also our future generations. And with this centennial year where we're celebrating 100 years of protecting places like this, you guys are the next generation of protectors, the next generation of stewards, and it's really up to you. The health of our ocean is in your hands, and I encourage you to become stewards, protectors of this ecosystem and our oceans around the world so that we can continue to enjoy it as we do now for many generations to come. So thank you all for joining us in this very special broadcast of Channel Islands Live. I hope you have enjoyed it. I've sure enjoyed being on this end. And I hope to see you next time underwater in the kelp forests at the Channel Islands.